Hi, I'm Olaf. Welcome to Born to Be Wide. Tonight we've got a music PR panel which features some of the best music PRs that I know, and they've come here to our new venue, Electric Circus, to tell us how to get press and some interesting little stories as well, I hope.
PR for me is understanding what your client, whether it be an artist or a company or a product, wants to say, who they want to say it to, how they want to say it. That's what PR is. Anybody can ring a journalist up and go, can you write about my shit band, please? Anybody can do that, really. The skill that Mike and Aarti and myself and you know and everybody on this platform brings to it is that innate understanding of how to say things, when to say things, who to say them to, what the audience is.
I run a company called Velocity Communications. I was invited up by Olaf, who I've known for a very long time, and he asked me to come up and talk to people in Edinburgh about PR and PR in the music industry, which is something I've done for the last far too long, quarter of a century, and it's been great. I've enjoyed it, and play some records, which which I'm going to do, and can't be bad, really.
How did you feel the discussion went?
I thought it was robust and fun, and I hope it was useful. I think that you've got to be honest in these things. You've got to tell a few scurrilous stories, and you've got to try and give people the benefit of your wisdom if you possibly can, for what it's worth.
I think what I do is I'm in a position where I'm a musician who runs my own label, and I like my music, so I like telling people about the music I put out, and I like all the music that I put out on the label. And so it's just about being a fan, I think, of music at my level, and letting people, or trying to convince people that they should be as excited about the music I want to sell as I am.
My name is Johnny Lynch, and I run Fence Records in Fife, a DIY label, and I also run Trailer Park Press, which is our in-house PR company, I guess, and as well as do music full-time as a musician, as the Pictish Trail, and one member of Silver Columns.
Brilliant. If you could just explain what your involvement's been tonight at Born to Be Wide.
Well, I've drank a lot of the beverages that were supplied free of charge. I've enjoyed the pizza. On stage, I kind of spoke a lot. I kind of felt a little bit, I don't know, a little bit out of the sort of industry side of things. I think my experience as a musician is kind of quite different to the rest of the panels, because they're all kind of working with musicians. But it was really interesting, really great to hear a bunch of stories and stuff, and yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Excellent. And if you could tell us if you've been down to Born to Be Wide before, what do you think of it as a whole?
I've been down a few times, yeah. I actually brought up earlier on in the thing, but first time I met a band on our label called Found was at one of these things, and Olaf introduced us, and it was Olaf who was like, "Oh, you got to come down to my night. You got to come down. I'll get you DJing." And I'm someone who likes hearing my own record collection played loud. So I was like, all right, yeah, cool, I get to play my own CDs. And so I've been down at a few Born to Be Wides doing that, and Olaf's since kind of hoodwinked me into getting involved in panels where I've been a bit out of my depth and kind of spoken in terms of record selling tens as opposed to tens of thousands.
The other thing I think is that PR has changed dramatically since I was doing artist PR, in the sense that it is now about intimacy and engagement and talking directly to the audience, whereas before, in say the late 90s, when I was doing a lot of artist PR, you would go to the enemy and then the enemy would talk to the audience kind of on your behalf or on the artist's behalf. Now, you're quite right, you can go and interact directly through your audience through social networking, which is becoming more and more a function of PR. And actually, I would say in a lot of cases the online platforms of the magazines are more important than the print versions. The print versions have their own credibility, their own stature, their own gravitas, but actually the ability to interact with an audience or interact with your consumer directly and talk to them and have that intimacy and engagement, that is where PR is going.
A lot of people I work with still have this, you should target traditional media. Why are we not in the papers? Why are we online? why are we on radio? They still want to see a piece of coverage, and it's kind of changing their mindset, I suppose, as well as your own, that just because you're not in the papers doesn't mean you're not reaching the people that you need to reach. We're doing it through an online channel, we're doing it through social networking, which we were talking about a little bit.
I'm Aarti Joshi. I do PR, well, I handle PR for DF Concerts, which kind of involves doing various gigs, touring artists, making sure those gigs sell. And on my one day a week that I don't work for DF, I work with the Red Hot Chili Pipers, because I love it.
Would you like to explain just what you've been up to tonight, this evening?
Yes, I've been sitting on a panel with another 3 great PRs actually, and I've really enjoyed it, because we've been talking about our job, and I think there was a point where we kind of all got to this chatting about what we do, and everyone, you could tell, loves it. And I think what we've done tonight is hopefully giving people some good pointers as to how they should kind of get their music out there, and who they should talk to, and how they should do it.
There's more of a chance now for unsigned bands to get to the people who are talking on the media through blogs and through e-zines as well. And there's that immediacy that if you're playing a gig next week in Edinburgh and you make friends of iTunes or whoever, you could be on that blog tomorrow, or Under the Radar, sorry.
That's not my blog.
Well, you know, people are involved in maybe.
Got the column.
But there's a lot of good Scottish blogs, so if you're in a band, get in touch with these people immediately and get your music to them as quickly as you can. If you go to the blog site, there will be also links to another 20, so you can build up a blog list of about 80 in an afternoon. And I like the blogs. With what I've been doing, I've always been really interested in what student press do, what fanzines do, what e-zines do, and increasingly now what the blogs do. And there is a subtlety.
Mike, what happens in the music industry, you lose your surname. You become the company that you are. So I'm Mike from Infected, or Mike Gourlay if you prefer. I do regional press for a load of bands. Just moved to Scotland after a long time in London. And we've been here at Born to be Wide. Not wild. I haven't been very wild, so I'm not sure how wide I've been, but, you know, it's been a good night. We've had some good talks from Andy Saunders, I thought was very good. Aarti Joshi was very useful. And Johnny Logan, isn't it his surname? From Fence Collective? Yeah. Just Johnny, anyway, who was very informative. And it was a good night.
How do you think the discussion went?
I thought it went pretty well. I was amazed how well we got on. I think, you know, when we got off on tangents, Olaf brought us back to ground again. That's not the expression, but took us from flying away in these abstract ideas of what PR is. I did, of course, get the ultimate hospital pass where we started the panel, and he went, "So, Mike, what is PR?"
One thing, though, I would, you know, which is welcome to comment. I mean, I did a seminar with festival bookers back in January, and 2 of them said that they actually looked to what NME's writing about, and so maybe not so much in this country, but abroad there still are these benchmarks. So if you got a German or a Norwegian promoter, then they'll be like, well, yeah, we read about that band in NME, so although it might not be selling you records, it's probably going to get you a booking. I mean,
I have sorry to interrupt. I mean, I have a very strong theory about this, and that the NME particularly is very important to the music industry, and very important to a degree to foreign territories. I don't think the kids give a fuck about it, to be honest. I've got an 18-year-old son who'd rather read Drowned in Sound, or some of the other stuff, you know, and will read NME.com. But the NME, for your 45-year-old bloke like me, in the music industry, who thinks he's quite cool reading it on the tube, it's quite important, you know, but really for an 18-year-old kid, it's just not really that important. They only sell 30,000 issues these days. You know, those magazines are becoming less relevant.
I actually think the NME now, the change it's had in the last month or so even, I think it's an amazing magazine now. I think it's really good.
Have they been writing about you?
Well, this is it. A little bit. But it has actually had an amazing effect just since the beginning of this year. I'm in this group, and we've not done any gigs until like our home game festival earlier on this year. So we've done like pretty much 0 shows. But off the back of getting a few bloggers getting a bit excited about a song, and NME getting, you know, putting us in their like buzz chart or whatever a few months ago, we've all of a sudden we've got like, I've got a gig every weekend now.
When I was working bands such as My Bloody Valentine, Juice and Mary Chain, Super Furry Animals, Teenage Fan Club, Primal Scream, you know, and so on, and Oasis and various other things, The Enemy, Mojo, Q, combined with Radio 1, guaranteed hit record, guaranteed gold record. I get an Enemy front cover, decent coverage in the kind of older glossies, the Qs, the Mojos, and an A-list on Radio 1, some MTV play. That's 100,000 records. It's a gold record right there. These days, not. You know, you've got to be cleverer. You've got to be more intelligent. You've got to be more strategic, and you've got to have a wider reach.
You've got your pretty much your album ready. You want to start creating a bit of a buzz about it. You know, on blogs, also any kind of mainstream media. What would be the first steps you would take?
By a PR person. I mean, there are two reasons for that. A, I want to live and eat. The second reason is a lot of these people simply won't take your calls. It's as simple as that. And you can argue till you're black and blue in the face about what the approach should be as a new band, phoning up John Dingle, forget it. He's not going to take your call. Unless you can find a really clever way of doing it, or unless you know a mate of a mate of a mate who knows him, he's not going to take your call. It's as simple as that. So what you have to do, I would say, as a new band, say in Scotland, for example, is work on the blogs, work on building what you have that you can access. Be realistic about it. Work out the journalists who like your kind of music. So if you happen to be in techno, look at the papers, see who the people who are going to correspond to that. See if you can get an email address just from the newspaper. Phone up the newspaper, find out if you can send music in. You know, be realistic about where you sit, and don't just shed loads of CDs, because it will be a waste of your time. Most of the people won't get back to you at all. It is very, very difficult.
I think Mike made some very important points there, and I would add to that. You know, if you're going to do it yourself as an artist or a manager, the key thing is to set yourself achievable victories, achievable targets, because it's a fucking soul-destroying job sometimes, you know, ringing people up and getting people being, you know, derisory on the phone to you about your music, or not taking your calls, or he's in a meeting, or he's at lunch, or he'll get back to you, or, you know, she's ill, or, you know, it's really soul-destroying, and anybody that's done this job at the lowest level will tell you that it's actually more preferable working in a call centre, to be honest. So set yourself achievable targets, and Mike's absolutely right. Better to get one or two really good pieces with journalists that understand your music and reach your audience than blanket bomb 500 people and get no replies.
For us, the whole thing has been about making journalists want to be at a fence event, or want to have a fence record, or want to have a record that Trailer Park Press is promoting, as opposed to the other way around. And it's not something you can do with your first release or your first thing, but if you can build up something and get a loyal audience, I think events is now in Scotland is kind of the way forward, and certainly the way that my label is kind of looking towards now, as opposed to just focusing on releases. Before, say 5 years ago, events we would just kind of treat as like a launch party for a record or something, and now Home Game and a festival I'm putting on later on this year called Away Game, even though they're small scale, these are the things that sell Fence Records, and as a name, label, and as like physical product, more than anything else. These are our adverts, and these are the things that press have like a thirst for.
If you write an email, comes back to the blanket email, don't send an email to everybody that says, and I've seen this done, hi X, do you want, don't do it, because if you spend an hour sending maybe 5 emails to 5 people that you really want to talk to, do the bit of how's your daughter and how's your son and how's the cat, you know, do it, because it works. They talk back to you, they talk about things that they are interested in, and if you just say, hi there, I've got this thing, can you write about it, thanks, bye, they don't care. They get 400 emails, probably 4 if you're from you about Coldplay. The thing that I always do for free as well, and I shouldn't really say this, but if I like you and I want to talk to you, I'll sit down with you and tell you how to do a biog, not in a terrible way, and what your pictures should look like. Because I think that's two of the really key things that you should have before you can go to a PR or take their price on it.
What will you give me for 500 quid now?
Exactly.
I've got an album coming out. I'm going to do 5 dates around Scotland. I want to maybe do a couple of Finn stores. What will 500 quid buy me?
Well, absolutely what Aarti and Andy said before. If you're enthusiastic about the act, you might get me for a bit cheaper. If I love it, then you've got me by the balls.
Do you know what the worst client is? Do you know what? I'll tell you what the worst client is. The worst client is a client for whom 500 quid is a lot of money. You know, that's the worst kind of client. If it's everything they've got, if they've had to borrow it to pay you, that's the worst kind of client. That's pressure. That's serious pressure. Not a major label with unlimited money paying you a retainer of £5 grand a month. That's not pressure. That's easy. All they can do is fire you. Some kid that's scraped it in.
Shouldn't they be doing their own PR up and down?
Yeah, well, I think we've got to the point. We've got to the point where where they want to push it a little bit harder. You know, you're not going to get me for that amount of money, but and I wouldn't want to do it, and I wouldn't want to take your money if that's all you've got. You know, then and I loved it that much, and I probably would waive it. But that's the worst client, isn't it? When it's really that desperate. I think.
Yes and no. You, if you're sure that you can get them £300 worth of record sales back.
I'm never sure. I'm never sure, to be honest.
Or you can get them enough attention that will result in £300.
My contracts, if you sign a contract with me, it says in the contract, I do not guarantee you any press. You cannot judge me on the weight or the volume of press that I get you. You get me, you get my time. You pay for me for my time. I will go out and pitch it in the most aggressive, passionate, articulate way I can. Nobody picks up the phone. Tough.
Going back to your question about how much do I charge for what I do, I end up paying bands in weird ways for working with me, because I try and invest as much of my time as I can into creating excitement around that band, which in turn brings in an audience which will pay money to come and see a gig that I got them playing at or something. So, for example, there'll be bands that I'll ask them for a bit of money if I'm putting out say 100 promos of their album or something like that, to cover postage costs and stuff, and the cost for doing the press release and all that sort of stuff, and that'll maybe come to about 350 quid or something like that for the first month or something like that. But then chances are I'm going to have them playing at an event that I'm promoting, because that's something I can put in the press release. And so chances are the next gig that they're playing, I'm going to pay them 200 quid. And then the next time, I'm going to get them to play the next month as well, the next event. So I'm paying them 200 quid. So already they're 50 quid up on the deal. After 2 months of
we'll have a little conversation.